thank you everyone for coming today. We are excited to have you here for the Starhaven Arts and Science Symposium. The session that we're going to begin here is Intro to Calligraphy, and I'm going to let Gwlados go ahead and take it over, and we're just excited to be here today. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure, and I'm excited to be here. I'm kind of leaning weird, but the main thing that's important for you to be able to see is the paper here. So this is an Intro to Calligraphy class, so it's perfectly fine if you have no prior experience doing calligraphy. And in fact, I try to take the perspective of someone, I in the past thought I could never do calligraphy, and I found some amazing ways to get myself engaged and interested, and finally not only doing calligraphy, but getting compliments regularly on my hand when other people see it. So we're gonna start from that kind of viewpoint. You don't need to know anything, but I do want to check, just because we can save some time. Does everyone here have experience, or are there people who have never done calligraphy before, which is totally fine? Okay, I see you with the yes, maybe. Okay, so I will go a little bit easier on the intro stuff, like the very intro stuff, like practice exercises, but we're still gonna cover it. So it's always a good reminder for everyone, no matter how long you have been doing it. All right, so okay, this is something that I do that probably would make a lot of very wonderful artisans in the society cry, or at least sigh heavily, possibly including my own Laurel. But for the sake of accessibility and getting things started, I really like to use graph paper, or what I have here is grid paper with, it's like a dot grid paper. That really helps give you an idea of the height of the letters that you're going for without being a specialty paper that you have to really seek out. You can buy graph paper or dot grid paper almost anywhere. You can also print calligraphy paper from the internet. Oh, sorry, my face. You can also print calligraphy paper from the internet, but that can get kind of like, I just like being able to go out and buy a notebook, and you can't buy a notebook of calligraphy paper. I also, to get really good and using calligraphy a lot, I had to integrate it into my everyday life. So for that purpose, I needed to find a way to be able to write on any regular paper. And I found that it works pretty well, especially for just getting you doing it. The most important thing when you're getting started is just to find a way to do it more than you're naturally inclined to do. So you kind of have to trick yourself. And the way I ultimately trick myself is by using it in my daily journaling habits. So what I'm currently doing is every day, this is actually even my Rustica practice. Every day I write the name of the day in Latin, and that gives me writing at least one day. And then I also do like headlines and fun stuff. And sometimes I'll just pull out a page and practice my alphabet if I'm bored and I'm stuck somewhere. So to make that, I'm not writing in there with a quill or anything. I buy these really great little calligraphy markers. This one, I get these from Amazon. This one actually has 2-in-1, it's double-ended. So I really like that because it gives you like 2 sizes to use. But these, pardon that it's wrapped, it's just labeled with washi tape. These are really common, easy to find. The Elegant Writer ones, you can pick them up at most craft stores and sometimes from Walmart. I actually buy these like in a big box so that I have some to share with people when I'm teaching in real life. So these also work really well. And this is not the same as writing with a quill. It's not the same as writing with a pen, but it is something that will help you actually get started doing it, because learning everything at once is very intimidating, but learning one thing at a time is a lot more doable and less scary. So I recommend, when you're starting, don't focus on learning everything at once. Start with a marker. But there are a few things to keep in mind when you're using a marker versus anything else. That you can't really pull a quill back, push. You can move it this way, but you can't really like push it away and have it draw a nice line so much. So just get in the habit of not doing that. Like when you notice yourself doing that with the marker, figure out a different way to draw the letter. Okay, so the best book or the best source I can recommend is this book. And I want to make sure this is, you can read this, right? Just to make sure. I always worry about them being backwards. This is the best book that I can recommend for picking up calligraphy of any type, because it goes through a bunch of different eras, so you can pick out new ones to learn when you want to. You can set them with your persona. That's really awesome. Yes, you can use anything to a chisel point. Like I've even in a pinch used a highlighter. It doesn't work the best, but it's better than not getting any practice in. Anything that has like a flat line. And you can actually, if you don't have a pen, or if you don't have if you need to make a quill in an emergency, you can use a plastic drinking straw. Any tube that you can cut so that it has one flat side on it, you can turn into a quill. It's fun. But this one has lots of different eras. And the thing I really love the most about it is that he gives you examples of extant hand. And so you can see that there's natural variation. And not only is there natural variation, but like with our own handwriting, because it is utilitarian and not decorative, you might have the same different letter forms for the same letter on the same page, the same paragraph, the same sentence, because you're just trying to communicate things by getting those letters out. You're not worrying about making every single one of them beautiful, unless you're maybe a little OCD about it, which is fine. Just most people don't have that level of care with their writing. So don't get hung up on making it perfect. Get hung up on making the letters clear and making the shapes, you know, the same shape, because they're looking for these shape letters the same way we're looking for our shape letters. So focus on the shape. Don't worry about getting everything exactly perfect. I also included another calligraphy book that is really good. Actually, it is technically the one I learned Roman Rustica from to start with, because I was somewhere without my Drogo, and I wanted to start for Inktober, and I had someone send me a picture from their book, and that's how I actually got started doing Rustica. So I will be using this as basically as a quill, because it has dyed, but it is my thickest calligraphy option. So I'm just dipping it in ink down here in case you're wondering what I'm doing. So when you have, if you've done calligraphy, you know this, you have a chisel point. You want to hold the chisel point at a 45-degree angle, like this, not straight and not horizontal, but 45. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so to make sure that you're holding it in the right position, here are some basic like practice exercises, and it's a really good idea to just practice either I usually practice my hardest letters as a little warm-up exercise, and then some of my favorite, because I have favorites, but I almost always do some kind of warm-up, and in the beginning it's best to do these simple little tricks. So if you have it at a 45-degree angle, you should be able to draw an X like this, with one thick and one thin. So try just doing some X's. Whoop. And that is like the most basic calligraphy exercise, but you don't have to be perfect at it before you can move on. Now, depending on the hand you're working on, they're going to be different basic shapes that are good to practice to get your hand warmed up. The main ones that Insular uses are a fun little flick. It's fun to draw those. And don't be hard on yourself if it starts like drawing and not like writing. That's actually quite normal. And that's the way you learn writing. When you learned writing as a youngin, you just don't remember because your brain was still developing, and all you remember now is that you just knew it one day. So don't be hard on yourself. Remember that you're in your, you know, 8-year-old son of a noble, daughter of a noble stage of education. Don't be hard on yourself ahead of your time. The other one, it has a lot of, and I'm actually going to switch to using 4 lines instead of 3, is this very narrow. I'm actually not getting it quite narrow enough. Also, this Rustica is a very like straight up and down alphabet. So that's part of why I like the graph paper, is because it's nice to have something giving you vertical lines as well as horizontal lines, so you can have an idea of how much space the letters are taking up. That's why the draw goes on a grid. It's handy. Another thing, if you're getting started and you're absolutely just not able to get the shape down, and this is a tip from wonderful Miss Catherine, or Lady Catherine, is to lay paper over the top and actually trace over the letters, because then you're kind of forcing your hand to draw the letters that you're going for. Oh my, that was just an unnecessary amount of ink. Okay, so I go a little bit crooked, especially because I'm looking this from the side. So if you see that they're slanty, just know that they shouldn't be. They should be nice straight up and down. So this one is, it's a little hook, and then you pull down and it gets wider at the bottom, which is a trick where you sort of turn it as you're going down. This one's harder, so we'll spend a little more time doing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And if you don't quite get the hang of these, don't give up on Rustica, because you can just do a line and try and just keep it nice and thin. That you can substitute if you're having trouble with the turn, which I clearly am at this angle, which is not the best. It is nice to have a drawing board, especially if you start using ink and like a dip ink, because your quills will hold more ink at a 45-degree angle. It's also just generally the best angle surface to work for with calligraphy, but it's not the best for showing you. So I had that one. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna move on from this so you don't have to just sit here watching me do these, because I can surely get you a shape of the shape of the letters. So starting with A, the Rustica A is distinctive for not having a crossbar. Instead, it has a little flick. It's cute. So there's our A. B is actually taller than the A. It has one of those fancy lines. Don't sweat it if you don't get it perfect. The top loop is small. And the bottom loop is a little flat on top, and it hooks back. You know what? You can tell it's a B, and that's what matters. Okay, so we're back to using our normal height. So this one is 4 boxes. This one is 5. Some of them are just a little bit taller, but this is all capitals, and all of them, they're all capitals, and they're all basically the same height, except for the few exceptions that are marked as tall letters. So C nice and simple. D, ooh, and that's an example of how you prepare for writing with a quill, because you can't pull. Instead of doing this and pulling on the downstroke, you draw the bottom stroke, and then you come back and connect. And that, the connection does take a little bit of practice. Don't be hard on yourself. Like with all of this, I spent an entire year learning my first calligraphy, writing 1 word a day. And there were days I would say, look at this J. It looks like a vaguely competent 9-year-old wrote it. And I would be very excited. I would say, don't look at any of the other letters, just the J. Look at how good the J is. So E especially is very thin. Oof. That's closer to right. And F is exactly the same. But without the bottom, as one might expect. So keep in mind that this is a Latin hand. This is very early in the development of our Western writing. So it does not actually have lowercase letters fully developed yet. You can also do the G. Oof. Try that again. Yeah. So you want to keep them narrow and tall. That's sort of the shape and the aesthetic for the whole thing that we're going for. Actually, I'm gonna try that one again, because the other thing is that this, there we go. The crossbar on the H is very tall. Yes, the I looks like an L. It's weird. You gotta, it doesn't have a long tail, and that's sort of what makes it look less like an L, but it totally looks like an L, and you'll see the differences when we get to how it's slightly different. So this is actually a modern constructed letter. Ooh, let's try that again. That's a J. There we go. So you can see, honestly, better if you look on the guide in your handout than I'm managing to pull off here with this surface. I apologize for that. I was originally planning to film from the top down, but I absolutely could not figure out how to make that work. So this is what I figured out. You'll see that a lot of them have this line up here that we practiced. A lot of that have that as the base. That's this line, it's this line, these lines here in the H, in the I. J doesn't have one, but K does. Ah, that felt good. K. Now, this is how L is different. It's one of the few that goes down, like it has an actual descender. I did mine kind of big. You might want to go a little bit more like this, but it actually does go down versus the I, which stays on the line. And that's the difference. That's how you can tell. Now, this is the other big shape you want to practice for Rustica, is here in the M. It's in the M, it's in the N, it's in the W, and it's in the X. It's in the V. Yeah, is a sort of a swoop. But out of context, I feel like it's hard to explain. Now, are these exactly like the exemplar that I have given you? No. Are they perfect? No. Can you read them? For the most part. That's what's important. I teach dancing also, and there is something I always say, which is any dance you finish standing and happy, you have done correctly. The steps are not as important because as a function of dancing. So if you're writing, it's not important that it's beautiful, it's important that it communicates. But making it more beautiful. But this is the thing, this wasn't a decorative art form. This was specifically for communicating everyday things, because before this, there was a hand that was based on carved stone monuments, and it was incredibly tedious. And that one absolutely is a decorative font or a decorative hand, you know, because it was specifically created for that purpose. This one was specifically created because they didn't want to go to all that trouble. They just wanted something to take friggin' notes in. So that's what this hand comes from. I like to do my cross stroke on my end first. Other people prefer to do the vertical lines first, like the first vertical line and then the swoosh and then the second. Like we do modern ends, but I prefer to do the swoosh first, only for historical ends. O is another good example of the whole you can't push, because you start on this side and you go down just to where you start to push, and then you catch it back up on the other side. So you're always pulling, you're never pushing, because what happens when you push is it hangs and then you get this. And that's if you're working with any kind of quill. This is one I was trying out earlier, but this one's my biggest. Okay. P. Oof. We'll call that good. P has a funny little upwards and then it'll cross the bottom. So it almost looks like the Greek letter, like a little bit. Q, just like now, big O, little tail. R, same as P, it has a little top, but then a long bottom. And now with all those that go really far and swooshy, you can make them go a little less swooshy. You can make them go more swooshy. That's sort of your artistic license. This is one of my favorites in Rustica. I love BS. Maybe it's just because I did Carolingian minuscule first. Oop. And I spent a really long time doing like those little FS's. So doing a real S just felt really nice. I just love it. I feel like it's so pretty. Okay, I'm gonna start being weird. Oh, and you gotta get it all the way bottom. And then there's a tiny little one. It's smaller than the top one. That's how you can tell it's not an I. I has a very tiny top part. See? But at first you're like, what? That's the same. So, full disclosure, U and V were the same. So this U is a modern letter. This V there we go. Now, the W is the same as the M, but imagine switching it up a little. So, do that again. Swoop stroke. Woo! I need more ink. That's the problem. Same base as the M, but then we close that one by meeting them together. Close that one. There we go. These are not good W's, but you see where I'm going. X, big swoosh, thin line, just like our practice, and then little floops. And if you don't believe me about the different extant letters, I've included a Wikipedia article on your handout for you to go to. The bit.ly, I promise, is not. It's just because the actual URL is huge. So there's two ways to do the Y. This one reads more like a capital Y, but this one is more fun to do. I like ascenders and stuff. Ascenders and descenders. So I like the ones that go big and floopy. All right. I have just enough space to get my Z down here in the corner. Awesome. Let me move it back. There you go. Nice Zorro Z. Okay. So these are not the clearest, but they're serviceable. Another thing in Rustica is they do have punctuation, and the punctuation is put here, like a little diamond in the center. The words are written either continuously without spaces, or they're written with spaces, and then these are periods, and there's not any other other sort of punctuation. There's only periods that denote a sentence is in it and you're moving on. Earlier Roman hands or Roman scripts, or are they scripts? I don't know if they're all monuments, but earlier Roman letter forms didn't. Yes, oh God, yes, the korbushka. So these are the basic letter forms. So some best practice type things. I always keep a roll of masking tape, washi tape, something like that in my Scribble box, because then I can tape everything here and I don't have wandering papers. And then also when they're all wet with ink, I can tape them up on something and keep them out of the way. And it's never served me bad. It's a holdover from when I did drafting in theater. So, are there any letters that anybody would like to see me do again? Or see me do a better version laying down and then show you? Not seeing any. Okay. Awesome. So I have on the handout, at the bottom of the handout, I have some tips for getting started. They're mostly things that I covered in this. So the handout is mostly a reminder, but it has one other thing on it. It has a challenge. So I have a challenge for you. And that is for 60 days, write one word or one sentence, depending on your level of ambition for the day or for the project in general, for the challenge in general. Write at least one word up to one sentence a day in the hand you would like to learn, in Roman Rustica, or if it's not Roman Rustica, a different hand that you would like to learn. And to help you do that, on page 2 of the handout, I have Ye Old Standard, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, which uses all of the English letters, which is different than the Latin character set, but that's fine. We're going to be using it to write in English. It's fine. In addition, I have a list of words that are SCA specific. I chose some of them from the Cal in Inktober, which is a Callantier Scribble Challenge that they do every Inktober in October. So I like to participate in that and do SCA style calligraphy for those. So I have chosen some of those. I also went through medieval letters and I chose some words based on that. And so there's some also specifically medieval flavor words. The final cut though is for uniqueness of letters, which is why there is a queen but no king. It's not a political statement. It's just a cue. So these sentences that I've listed are like the quick brown fox sentence. They use all of the letters in English. They may not use all of them in upper and lower case, but that's fine because in Roman Rustica, there's only one case. So you can practice writing a whole sentence, you can practice punctuation. If you've got more time, more spoons, etc., you can practice more letters in a day, but you can do at least one word. So I have given you tools to go forth and practice, and a challenge that you do so that we can add to the calligraphic might of Trimaris. Because one thing I've heard is that, and this is like from Mrs. Jeanette, who does, who's in charge of awards and everything, is that they're perpetually looking for scribes. Not that they don't need illuminations done, those are forever going to be needed, but generally there are more people who want to do the pictures than who want to do the writing. So if this seems like your jam, or even just something that like you could be doodling on, it's a great contribution to the kingdom and to the society in general and to the dream of other people. Because think about how good it felt to get those scrolls. You can be part of that. Whether they ever meet you or not, you can be part of that for people. And I really love sharing that aspect of it. So I super encourage you to pick up a calligraphic hand and start sharing your beautiful writing with the Kingdom of Trimaris. All right. I have I have 12 more minutes. Does anybody have questions, comments, suggestions?
What is the most common hand to write your scrolls in, or is it just whatever you do, people accept happily?
Generally, people accept happily whatever you're willing to contribute. There's not, I'm going to actually turn this since I'm done writing. There's not like a set list of hands that are required to use. Roman Rustica is not a bad one, as like if you just want to learn a hand so that you can contribute to the scribal needs of the kingdom and the known world, honestly. Roman Rustica is a good one. The earlier Roman one, even though it is purely decorative and very fancy, I don't recommend, because unless they're a Roman persona, it does not mean anything. So I wouldn't recommend that one. There is Roman Insular, and that one is also popular as like a base hand for scrolls. And then Carolingian Minuscule is probably the most easy to transition from modern handwriting to a historical font And that's also very common. That's Carolingian minuscule is like a standardized font of the Carolingian Empire. So that lasts for quite a while in the Middle Ages and is pretty universal. And it's not, other than like the S's, it's not super different than modern handwriting. And you can easily, like, you could just do a different S. Like, I struggled with that for a long time. I asked Mr. Smiken at the Scribble event, was there a suggestion, tips on writing this S better? And she said, pick a different S. So that's good advice. And the more you look at extant examples, the more you'll be reassured that you are doing okay. Because this was communication was utilitarian. So yeah, it's just about having neat enough to communicate handwriting. Scrolls, obviously you want to be very pretty, but you'll get, if you focus on utilitarian, you will get there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very welcome.
I have a question concerning style, I guess. If you know that it's a Viking persona, would it be acceptable to write it in elder or younger Futhark?
Oh, absolutely. Like, people love when you do that extra bit of research and to learn a new hand just for their, or, you know, if you have a Viking persona, you could dive into a Viking style heraldry or scribal stuff. And then when people want scrolls for Viking personas, they'll come to you. So that's fine in either direction, but absolutely, you can absolutely specialize it for the persona of either yourself or the person that you're writing for. The two hands I know I chose because they are appropriate for the time period of my two personas. So I have a Roman persona that would write in Rustica, and then I have a Crusade era persona that would use Carolingian minuscule.
Excellent, thank you.
You're very welcome. Yay, okay. So I super challenge you to try the 60-day thing. And I don't mean 60 days in a row. I don't care how many breaks you take. Just try doing 60 days and see how, if you think, I can't do this, do it for 60 days. Not in a row, 60 days total, and see if after 60 days you think you still can't do it.
And will you comment if I do it and then I post a picture of it and I tag you? You're going to comment? Help keep me cheered on?
Probably. We can actually, you know, the funnest way to practice calligraphy, if you have a friend, is some of my other SCA friends and I, before wars, we would start writing each other. This would be a great thing to do right now during the pandemic. We write each other calligraphy letters and then photograph them, put them on Facebook and tag them. And we would pretend like we were sending like messengers back and forth on horses, but it was really fun. And it gave us an excuse to practice our calligraphy. And it's also nice because you're like, I do one page of a letter and then that's it, you know? And so that's another thing. But doing a chunk like that it takes some stamina from your hand. So it's better to build up and, you know, start with, especially if you're in that place where you're feeling like, I can't do this, start with one word or one sentence a day. Do it for 60 days and see if you feel like you still can't. But a more advanced practice, letter writing, is fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This was awesome. I love sharing my love of well-formed and beautiful historic letters. So, and also practical and utilitarian functional letters, because they're both very important in different contexts. So thank you guys so much for coming. I'm so glad to be doing A&S with you guys again.
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gladys. That was fabulous. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise there. I do have an announcement to make real quick, just for the good of the group. There is going to be trivia about SCA history questions about the 17th century, including art and literature. If you would like to go into the, oh, it just jumped out of my brain, the fireside chat area. So for our lunchtime today, that will be going on from 12 to 1:15, and there's a chance to win prizes.
Cool.
Yeah, so be sure when you log out of here, if you want to jump into the fireside chat and take part in that, that'd be awesome. And then our next session is going to start up at 1:15 to 2. So be sure to check your schedule for the rest of today's events. But we still have 5 minutes, so feel free to hang out and ask any additional questions. But thank you again for your time in sharing that with us today.
My pleasure.